Okay, so as is common, I'm starting with a pop quiz. What do we know about Elijah? Any of the stories from like Sunday school, any of the ones that we know about him?
He was a prophet,
He was a prophet. Yep.
and he used to give the good news,
Uh-huh.
kind of like John the Baptist was, but not quite.
Yeah. Much earlier, right? Before the time of Jesus, right? In the Hebrew Bible, not the New Testament. Perfect. Yep. He was sent by God, usually to call some people to account. There's some famous stories. Maybe one of where he goes toe to toe with the prophets of Baal, and there's 500 of them, and they're singing and praising, and then Elijah calls down the fire of God and burns up the sacrifice, right? This is also in the time of Ahab and Jezebel, so he's he's kind of got a target on his back a little bit because he's going toe to toe with a foreign queen, and there's some tension there. And also there's a time where he runs away, and he's so bone deeply tired that there's this beautiful story of the angel of God meeting him under a juniper tree or a broom tree and feeding him so that he can just keep going one more step. So in our Jewish siblings, in their stories, Elijah is like a hero of faith. He is like a name that keeps getting invoked a lot. That in the story of the Hebrew Bible, he's like one of the main events, one of the prototypes of prophet, right? That he goes out and he calls people into account, and he says, "You're doing everything wrong. Here's what God wants you to do," and really is this larger than life figure. And Elisha, we love similar names. We've got a J or an SH. They pronounce very similar, so thank you, Deborah, for enunciating which one we were talking about, because it can get a little sticky when we're reading it out loud. So Elisha is sort of Elijah's heir apparent, right? So they've been working together for a long time. He's been training. If you think about it like an apprenticeship, right? So you have this master prophet who is very good at what he does, is called by God, and then Elisha is his apprentice, is kind of going along with him and is present for some of these stories, and is learning how to be a prophet basically from the best. So then this time, in this story that we're telling, Elijah is getting ready to pass on to heaven, right? To leave this mortal plane, to be done with his work, and to be taken into God's presence. And this is really the last conversation we get between the master and the apprentice, right? Where Elijah is getting ready to retire. We even have that same phrase, right? If you've ever heard the phrase that someone took up the mantle of someone else, this is the story that it's talking about, where it's literally the cloak that delineated Elijah as the prophet that Elisha is literally inheriting, right? That it is. You were wearing this coat and now you're not anymore, and I will put it on, which will mean that I am taking on this role in community, that I am rising into this place. And this last conversation, right? Elijah says, "I'm about to be leaving. What do you need from me?" And Elisha says, "A double portion of your spirit. I want to be just as on fire for this work as you are." And what does Elijah say to him? What's that? Maybe. Right? Yeah, right? It's gonna be hard. Right? Which is the most honest answer from person who's training someone else. I want to be like you, and you're like, well, it was a lot of work to get here, right? I had to go through a lot of stuff to get to where I am. And you can, but you have to. What was the invitation? You have to watch it. You have to watch me go. You have to stay present. You have to be with this loss all the way through to the end. And you have to let it change you. It's going to be hard. But you have to stay present to the things that are grieving you. You have to stay present to this loss. You have to allow this life to carve you deeper in order to hold that double portion. In the book, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, there's a beautiful poem called On Joy and Sorrow. And it talks about how sorrow is the act that carves us, right? Carves the riverbed deeper so that it can hold the water of joy. That a cup that holds the wine has to be burned in the fire for it to be not porous anymore and just let it out. That the knife carves the lute, which makes the beautiful music. And a double portion, right? That's not just like, I learned at your feet. Right? That is, I want to maybe even do something different, do something even more and greater than you were able to do because I have what I've been gifted with, but I have extra that's been given for you, and I'm going to do something that transforms this into something even more beautiful, an alchemy that I don't understand. And Elijah says, yeah, but you have to stay present, even when it hurts. There are a lot of people who use spirituality as a way to wallpaper over what hurts. If you've ever met someone who wants, who can only focus on the good things, right? That everything has to be the most joyous, right? That if you're feeling anger or grief, that it's somehow lowering the vibration, right? Or that God must not be present if you're in pain. We've heard people say things like that, and yet this story points at something different. That grief is transformative. That being in relationship with the things that hurt us has the chance to transform us to be able to hold a double portion of God's Spirit. To be able to be true channels of joy, not just pretending that everything's okay. We call that spiritually bypassing, when we try to use spiritual language to wallpaper over the things that are really genuinely painful about our lives, about this world, about what's going on right now. How often have we actually allowed ourselves to grieve, to really be in relationship with our grief? It's hard. Elijah was not kidding. This is a hard thing you are asking, and yet it is through that rite of passage, that being in a relationship with the thing that cracks us open, that allows us to be a vessel for the Spirit and what the Spirit is doing here in the world to transform the things that are hurting. The only way out is through. And there are the people on the periphery, right? We hear this little snippet, this one little verse of the 50 people who are like, I'm going to be over here. That looks hard. I don't know if I can be that close, right? I'll watch, but I want the option to get out if the getting's good. Right? They're on the periphery, but they cannot enter in, right? And how many of us are like that, right? There is just a deluge of things that hurt all the time, and I don't blame them, right? It is a hard ask to enter into the pain of our own lives and the lives of people around us. I would be on the other bank of the river too, right? Because when we enter into grief, there's this sense that if we actually let ourselves feel it, that it will be overwhelming, that there isn't an other side, right? if we actually allowed ourselves to feel how much pain there is in the world. Is it bottomless? Francis Weller, in the book The Wild Edge of Sorrow, says if all of the unspoken pain in the world made a sound, the universe would be singing all the time. There is a reverberation of suffering here. And it can be overwhelming to pay attention to it, right? Keeping it apart from us, because I can just focus on my own life. I can't actually enter into the pain of what's going on. There's a phrase that if you can't hear the bombs dropping, just put your ear to the earth and you will hear the echoes. How many of us take the time to put our ear to the earth to hear the bombs dropping in Gaza, the bombs dropping in Iran? They are here. Part of us knows it, but it's safer to be on the other side of the river, right? I can't enter into that flow of tears. It might sweep me away. And yet, Elisha, when Elijah is taken up into heaven, he tears his clothes. This is a sign of deep, deep grief. It is his own coming into his own initiation into what is next for him. It is through the portal of grief. And he takes Elijah's mantle and he rolls it up just like Elijah did. And he has ripped off his own clothing so he can't go back to where he was. There is nothing for him to put back on his body. The only way out is through. The only mantle he can take on, the only clothes available to him now is this robe. We can't hide from our own initiation into that deeper sense of connection and spiritual kinship. So he puts it on. And I imagine how it felt to wear it. Maybe like a little kid wearing my mom's shoes, right? Oh my gosh, can I actually take this on? Will this actually fit my shoulders? It's so heavy. But just like Elijah did, he rolls it up and he hits the water with it in the same ritual he saw Elijah do. And the first time it doesn't work. And I can imagine Elisha being like, the heck just happened? I went through all of that? And he screams, where is God? Where is God? The God of Elijah. You promised I would get a double portion of your spirit. I did the thing I had to do. I grieved it. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm cracked open. Didn't you say that this was what I needed to do? And I can imagine just the despair. And he takes the breath. And he tries again. And the water splits. And he's able to walk through. And he becomes the prophet that Israel needs. He steps into this next chapter of his life. I wish I had easier to swallow news about this period in history. I wish that we could just dance our way through it, joy our way through it, and we will. Joy will be present. But it is not the whole of the story. Things are falling apart. Some things are dying. And our job is to see it through, to be with what hurts in our own lives, in each other's lives, in our collective life, and allow it to carve us deeper, like the poem says. And it is there where we hold our grief and our joy at the same time. It is there where we get the double portion of the Spirit that allows us to speak truth to power, that allows us to dream and work for a world that doesn't have to look this way. But we have to grieve the world we are losing right now before we are able to step into what is. It's going to be hard. Elijah wasn't kidding. And yet, once we tear our clothes, there's no going back. There is only assuming the mantle of what is necessary in this time. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Elisha was all grown up and had to launch into his own life as a prophet without his mentor and friend. It's hard. And yet, even in our despair, when we cry out, God, where are you? I was told that the God of my parents had power, and it's not working. We take a deep breath and try again and watch the miracle that happens when we fully take on the mantle, embody what we are being called into in this moment, and watch the water split. Amen.